You're listening to episode 146 of Present Moment. Welcome to Present Moment, Mindfulness, Practice, and Science. I'm Ted Meissner. Present Moment is a podcast with interviews, conversations, and roundtable discussions. We speak with mindfulness teachers about their newest findings published in peer-reviewed science journals, teachers about their understanding and methods as they work with students of mindfulness, authors about their books and interests, and we also speak with everyday practitioners. The website presentmomentmindfulness.com has show notes for each episode along with resource materials. Bonnie Griffin joins us to speak about 6 small meditation meals a day. If you're listening to this podcast and find value and insights from what is shared here, know that this is made available from your generosity and the generosity of others like you. I want to thank those of you who are making monthly donations to keep this podcast going. And if you're not yet, please take a moment, go to presentmomentmindfulness.com and click on Make a Donation. One-time or especially monthly donations show you value this work, which can't happen without you. Thank you for your help, your support, and your kind generosity. There can be a subtle, or sometimes obvious, tendency to measure contemplative practice by time spent on the cushion. Performance, rather than substance, is encouraged by accumulated minutes on Insight Timer or other trackers, giving us a visual dopamine reward of how strong our practice is. But there's another way to be mindful, in small doses throughout the day, not tied to striving for goals. Bonnie Griffin received her undergraduate degree from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and her master's from the University of Texas in San Antonio. She's an entrepreneur, mother of 2 boys, and avid collector of gas and oil memorabilia. She happily resides with a family in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our guest today is Bonnie Griffin. Bonnie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm very glad to have you here. When I first heard about your book and saw the title, it caught my eye, and I did a bit of a double take. And I'm like, no, there's something interesting there. So I'm very glad to be speaking with you about it. And before we go into the book itself, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I majored in psychology, actually, in Spanish. So I'm bilingual and went to college at the University of North Carolina. Little trivia, I graduated with Michael Jordan, which was a lot of fun back then, watching him play basketball. And then when I went to graduate school, I switched over to education. And so most of my background is in the area of education. And strangely, after graduating from graduate school, I started a business. And so I have a large family background in small businesses, and became an entrepreneur shortly after graduate school and started my first business. And that's when all the stress-related illnesses started. And so, I took on another business, and things have really been great in that area. But in terms of the stress, that's where I started to really see a lot of issues.
And so as that happened to you and you're noticing these problems, how did you adjust your coping mechanisms? What happened? How did you work with those?
Well, at first I did, I think, what a lot of people do, and started to look for answers on the outside. And so I would go to doctors, and they would say, I think it's this. And then I'd have an MRI, and thousands of dollars later, I was no better. And the answers were just not very clear. And so I was also a single mom with 2 boys, which leads to a little bit more stress. But I was also supporting myself and the boys And I knew that everything was up to me. I had to make it. And so that type of stress is a little bit different than when it's a stress that comes under a very stable job. So because I started my own business, it was just a different type of stress. And so doctor after doctor and different illnesses would come up. I noticed that the most debilitating were the migraines. And migraines, not only cause you to miss hours and hours of work, but they're just very, very frustrating because you need to be your best. And so, doctors would offer medications and pills and things like that. And that is where I started, and nothing ever seemed to help. Business was doing great. And so I added a third business, and the problems just began mounting on top of, the stress was just mounting on top of other stressors. And so a few years ago, I started to really search the internet for answers that were from the inside out and not so much from all the outside. And I had friends that, my age that were having heart attacks, and that was really scary. Other friends that were taking, lots of prescription drugs, and other friends that were drinking after work and things like that. I knew that wasn't the answer for me. That's not what I wanted. I knew there had to be an answer. And so I was able to start to search for things in the whole mindfulness movement. And that's where it really started. And books and things like that, I just started to eat it up as fast as I could. And it really was a great start for me. And so I really appreciate people like you, Ted, who are out there doing this every single day and reaching people that really need to hear this, your message. And I'm really grateful for you and what you're doing.
Thanks so much. And that's really the joy of the work, is that it's helping people see that difference.
Yes, absolutely.
So what happened then? You started to get interested in how mindfulness practices might help. What was the next step that you took?
Well, a logical step was meditation. And so everything that I was able to read through books and online all talked about meditation in the morning, which was great. Okay, and that's a great way to start your day. And so I actually started with meditation in the morning, first thing when I would get up in the morning. I tend to be a very high energy, very active. I have a lot on my plate, and so it was a challenge, but it was working. I could tell that I was starting to change, and so that was fantastic. And I started to see a difference in the way that I was viewing life and viewing the stress. But then, Ted, by 9:30 in the morning, something changed, and I would go into a staff meeting, and I would wonder where the meditation went and that peaceful feeling. And I would find myself getting maybe frustrated with an employee or overwhelmed with everything that we had to get done in a day, and I just felt like I'll have to wait till tomorrow morning and maybe meditate longer. And that's really when the book started. Is I started to think, why can't I break down my meditation into smaller segments, much like the doctor had told me. I was told by a doctor that I have severe hypoglycemia. And he said, you need to break your meals down into 6 meals a day. You need to eat smaller meals. Don't eat a big breakfast and then go 4 or 5 hours. So I had started doing that before all the problems. And I started thinking, why can't I break meditation? And I didn't see where anyone else was actually doing that. And I started doing that. And then I thought, you know what? The meditation in the morning has a whole different focus than what I need at 9:30 in the morning when there's people in my face and problems. It's a whole different type of meditation than I would need at 4 in the afternoon when I've had a really hard day and I still have so much work to do. So I started thinking, you know what? What if each meditation had a focus of its own that for me personally would gear towards what I was experiencing that part of the day? So that's kind of where it started. And it, began to change my life. It really did. And so I started to see the migraines disappear. The hypoglycemia completely disappeared, which is just amazing to me that the doctors had said, this is you have the lowest blood sugar we've ever seen, this particular doctor. They just couldn't believe it. And that's disappeared. I would wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares, and that's so frustrating. And then you feel like you didn't sleep well and you're not prepared for the next day, digestion, issues and that sort of thing. The list goes on and on and on. But as I began to change the way that I view the stress and begin to take on this mindfulness throughout the day and remind myself every few hours to do it, that's when everything changed.
Mhm. So I'm very curious and want to unpack some of this that you're mentioning. You've described yourself as someone who has a lot on their plates, and certainly with running three
Hmm.
businesses at the time when you're going there, I can see that there seems to be a propensity for getting things done, for doing stuff. And I'm wondering,
Yeah, some very high octane. I'm running 5 businesses and one nonprofit. So the stress hasn't changed, but the
Mhm.
way that I view the stress has changed drastically. And I really believe that that is the reason that I've been able to get rid of all these doctor's appointments. I haven't been to the doctor in almost 4 years now,
So as you
which is
started your
good.
meditation practice, what I'm wondering is, did you run into what I commonly hear from participants in programs is one of the challenges they run into is that sense that they should be doing something. And particularly for people who are high energy, who get a lot of things,
Yes,
if you ever ran into that when
yes.
you started.
Oh, absolutely. And it's very difficult to get out of that mindset when you are, a type A or a very, high octane type human. It's very difficult. And so I think that was part of the training of my brain to be able to step aside. And one of the meditation meals at 12:30 is called Inspire. And that's when I started to set aside time each day for creative time, for inspiring myself. And those become moments that you look forward to. I've also linked them to an app on my phone, and so that was really helpful. And in the midst of a sea of notifications that we get constantly on our phone, telling us of this and that, they're so distracting. And so when I created these notifications for the mini meditations, I noticed that they sounded differently. They sounded great. And then it was something I looked forward to. So in the middle of the day when all these crazy things are happening, I hear that and it instantly reminds me to pause, stop, and take a few minutes and then created a meditation with a focus. And so that's something I actually now look forward to every day.
And it sounds like you've run into a way to deal with the situation that often comes up, and I've fallen into that trap myself, where you view meditation practice, or I have viewed meditation practice, as a pause in the terms of a retreat. I'm withdrawing from the world. And of course,
Right,
that little
right.
break, and it's great during that break, but as soon as I go back into it, I've set aside my practice. I'm no longer with my practice. And so over time, that's become
Interesting.
an education in how to bring that way of being throughout my day and do it the rest of the time. And a way
Exactly.
you've met that is, instead of doing the one and then having that sense permeate the rest of your day, you've separated out into different thematic meals. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about those, and what some of the things are that you have in the book, maybe what some of your favorites are.
Sure. So one of the ones I guess that I honestly use the most is the fourth one. The meditation meal number one is very traditional. Number two is kind of getting a grasp on your day and making sure that you're immune to the stress that is getting thrown at you. And as I mentioned, the third one is all about inspiration. The third one typically happens during a lunch break in a busy day. And I was noticing that I would eat and rush back into work. And I started thinking, why not take that time of day and flip it around and create a meditation that is inspiring myself. And if I'm in a situation where I can't inspire myself, then begin to look to inspire others. So if you're in a crowded restaurant or something like that, that's where that comes in. But the meditation meal number 4 has been the most influential in me, and that's called the big picture meditation. And that's when mid-afternoon I tend to be tired and start to get overwhelmed with all that didn't get done in the day. And that's when I start to run the day through my head and start to see all the struggles as lessons. And so, as others have said, I do see that life is school for the soul. And I started to look at the lessons, the struggles differently, and started to find the way that that they were actually being used in my life to push me in different directions. And that was something that I'm able to carry with me, of course, all throughout the day. And so that's been very, very helpful. And you also start to change the way you see the people in your lives. I used to be agitated and frustrated and, I don't understand this person. And now I start to see the people that are in my life as people that are supposed to be there. And you start to change the way that you treat people and that you see people. And I have about 50 employees, and it can be very frustrating sometimes with employees, but being able to change my mindset of how we're connected has really helped me a lot. I mentioned something else with number 4 called a pelican perspective, where when I start to not be able to see that big picture, I just fly up mentally and look down, and I see how small my problem really is, because so many people make their problems so much bigger than they really are. And so that's really something that I remind myself to do every afternoon at about 4:00.
And it sounds like in your practice, you're also shifting not just how you're relating to what's in your day and to yourself. There's also some closer connections with the people around you. Can you say just a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, that has been, I would say, a very large part of this. I started out, Ted, just trying to find something to keep just from the stress and trying to keep myself out of the doctor's office. And so really it was very personal. So all of this was something I was doing for myself, not sharing it with anyone else. And I began to see that I was not irritated with some of the employees. I was seeing the people in my life. I have 2 teenage boys, and boy, just that alone could be exhausting and very trying. And the first summer they learned to drive was, it was very difficult. And so the way that if anybody's had teenage boys, I'm sure girls would be even harder, that it can be a challenge. And seeing the challenges that they're giving me has changed the way that I start to see the life lessons. And I've learned a lot about patience and just the people that are in my life. I begin to approach them a little differently. And so life is different now. Life looks completely different than it used to. And that's really interesting. And, a lot of people might say, this is too much time out of my day. How can I spend? Because when you add it up, the way I have it laid out, it's 45 minutes of your day. And a lot of people might say, I don't have 45 minutes, especially entrepreneurs and people that are running businesses like I am. You just feel like you don't have the time. But I'm telling you, your time becomes so much more efficient. The time that used to be wasted on stress is now productive time. And it's completely changed the way that I view my time, and also the way that I utilize my time. And I'm way more productive.
Yeah. And so in addition to seeing that productivity, you're also, it sounds like you're experiencing some different ways of relating to other people, and maybe more awareness of their perspectives and their humanity too.
Right.
Changing things for you too.
Right. That one of the things that are mentioned in the book under, it's mentioned a couple times, but in the second meditation under immunity, I do what's called code switching. And that's something that I do. I'm bilingual, and it's something that the bilinguals know a lot about, when you switch from speaking one way to speaking another way with your family and friends. Maybe one way at work, and you come home, and bilinguals are able to do that. And so I started to kind of relate that to the way that I was looking at people. And I started to mentally flip a switch from my ego self to my soul self. And so what used to frustrate me with people suddenly when I began to look at them from a soul perspective, I began to approach them with love and understanding and patience. And it really has changed the way that I see everyone. I mean, it's been, I
And
guess,
what I
a great
find,
side effect of having to do these of the meditations. I've just learned so many more things that go along with this time.
what I find fascinating about this is many of the listeners who may follow me on Facebook see this happening, is that even just today, I was getting into a bit of a heated discussion with a Buddhist monastic about
Mm,
how secular mindfulness programs and practices are devoid of ethics, and they're all about greed, and people are missing so
mm,
much. And then I hear from you exactly what I was sharing with them, is that because we're not explicitly saying your particular ideological views does not mean that compassion, care, connection are not things that
absolutely.
come from this practice. So thank you for sharing that, because it's very important for people to hear and know that that can be something that occurs even when there isn't the explicit "you should be nice to other people" instruction, that is something.
Exactly. Oh, that's exactly right. And it's interesting when you start to look at another person and see their soul and see that journey, that because everyone has a different journey. We all have different journeys. We all have problems. And I have a lot of employees that think that someone else's life is better than the other. And so we actually do that in part of our employee training now, is to spend time understanding that each person has their own life lessons and their own journey, and that you can't judge that of another. And so I'm able to take a lot of this and start to share this with the employees on a regular basis, which has been really, hopefully it's getting through to them.
Well, thank you for doing
You never know.
that. I'm also kind of curious. I'm wondering if you can say a little bit more about why you expect there may be more of an interest, I almost said appetite, for several small meditation meals during the day rather than one or two large sessions. Why do you think there might be a bit of an interest in finding what you have found?
Well, first of all, from experience, because the morning meditation, I would extend it by 5 minutes or get up 10 minutes earlier. And I was still finding that by the middle of the day, work had just taken over. And I was, just curious about where did it go? And you find yourself, maybe frustrated with a coworker or agitated in traffic and things like that. And I was confused about it. And for me personally, it has been life changing. So every couple of hours, I hear a pleasant notification on my phone, and I used to think, I've got to throw that phone in another, hide it under the couch cushion. I don't want to hear it. And I finally said, you know what? Let's use it for good, because everybody that is these young people that are working for me, they all are attached at the hip to their phones, and so when I began to say, you know what, let me use it for good. And so when I hear my notifications now reminding me to inspire, reminding me to see the big picture, those are things that I feel like are helpful to break it up. And just like the doctor had said, in the book, I talk about being in the doctor's office, and the doctor is telling me with severe hypoglycemia, you need to eat many meals throughout the day. And I started doing that, and actually is probably better for your health as well, just like breaking up the meditations have been for me. And I'll tell you that one of the meditations is at the end of the day, and that one has been so necessary for me because I bring home a lot of stress, and it's called clearing, and it's done before you go to bed. But that's just a good example of, it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be with music, or it doesn't have to be very drawn out. It can be in your office, your home office, and when you're plugging up your phone at night and that sort of thing. But the clearing is so important to me because I felt like I bring home so much buildup and junk. And so it's like it's constantly, the 6 times a day help you to sleep more easily and help you to not have so much buildup. And a lot of this buildup, Ted, we don't realize is piling upon our shoulders.
Mhm.
A lot of people will take it internally, and especially people that are highly sensitive, like myself. I'm very, very considered to be very highly sensitive, and you don't realize how much stress you're bringing into your body, and so it needs to be peeled away. I think throughout the day. I think it's much more effective than once a day.
Bonnie, I'm wondering, is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners?
Well, I hope, first of all, that it can help someone else. And I think that I'm just a great walking example of the stress related illnesses were starting to debilitate me. And I know that it's a personal thing for me, but I know that the meditation, the mindfulness, and doing this throughout the day has really changed my medical chart. And I can tell you that I don't miss that one single bit. I don't miss going to the doctor. I don't even remember my doctor's name anymore. And it used to be on the tip of my tongue. And so those are things, not to mention the thousands of dollars, that I've saved in going to the doctor. And so it's been for me, it's been life-changing. It's been helpful. And the people that are in my life have noticed, and family's happier. They notice that I'm a happier person. And I think it's benefited all of us. So I hope that the book can just help, even if it helps one person, I'll be happy.
Thanks so much for that. Our guest today, Bonnie Griffin. For folks who are listening, I will have a link to her book on the episode page for this episode. Bonnie, thanks for being here. Really appreciate having this chance to talk with you about your book.
Great, Ted. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about something you've heard in today's podcast, please come visit the website at presentmomentmindfulness.com. You'll find an entire webpage devoted to this and every episode. You can comment on the episode page and find show notes and other helpful resources for your mindfulness practice. The shakuhachi music heard on Present Moment is used by permission and through the generosity of musician Rodrigo Rodriguez. His website is linked on the Present Moment website on the About Podcast Music page. Sound editing, mixing, and mastering provided by the generosity of Anthony Dominello of StructureFromSound.com. Until next time, remember, every moment you have a choice. Make it the best you can. See you next time on Present Moment.